things that we want to keep in mind as we are working with our dogs is that they will only know what we train them to do, what we teach them. So especially because we have babies, we have the opportunity to say, this is exactly what I need you to do, and we can form really good habits rather than bouncing off of, let's wait for the dogs to be full-grown adults and they have habits that we really don't like. And now we have a bunch of bad habits that we have to fix, right? So they will only understand what you teach them, whether that is on purpose or by accident. So if my dog accidentally, which she does, one day she stuck her nose in my pocket, my sweatshirt pocket, and she found treats, and now she reinforced herself, and now she sticks her nose in sweatshirt pockets because she says, oh, I got treats there once, and that was what was taught. She's almost 8 years old, so we're a little lax with her at this point because she's a whole adult and she's perfect in every single way. So when we're communicating with our dogs on this first page, we talk about the different types of classical conditioning. Forward classical conditioning means that we're going to say the word before we do anything. So if I'm going to ask my dog for something, I'm going to say the word first and then use whatever help I need, whether that's a hand signal or a lure or starting to move before, after I say that word, right? So if I'm gonna say, for us, we use the word yes as our duration marker. So yes means that's the correct behavior. Keep doing it. At some point, value of some kind is going to come, whether that's going to be a petting or a good girl or I reach into my pocket for a cookie. She knows the word cookie. Whatever I say, or when I say yes, some kind of value is coming. So yes, then I'm going to reach into my pocket to deliver that cookie. So that this way she hears the word yes. Eventually, I may not have to use the cookie. Yes, and then I can pet her. Yes, good girl. All of those things are going to be value, and we don't want to rely just on the food. We want to rely on some relationship, so that this way, at some point, I don't have to have a cookie on me all the time. I can say, hey, this is what I need to do. You want to work for me, right? So she's my service dog. I will have a couple of, like if I go to a 4-hour-long doctor's appointment, I'll have a couple of cookies on me every once in a while. And then at the end of the doctor's appointment, I take out a ball and we play once it's an appropriate place to do so, right? So on that note, the release is going to be your biggest value, right? So some people use breaks, some people use okay, some people use free. I don't really care what you use as long as it's consistent, and that means you're done. You're free to do what you want, but please come. I would prefer it if you come interact with me, play with me, so that this way you're working for me, not just you're working for the cookie that I have or the ball that I have. Does that make sense? Okay, so if we're going to use luring to teach our dogs things, luring can be done with food, a ball. It's easier with food, but if your dog's super ball motivated, you can do it with a ball as well. Food's just easier to rep it out. If I'm gonna say, Ruby, let's go. Let's go. I can move her around, sit, by letting her kind of gnaw on the food, right? So if she's gnawing on the food and I have this nice big piece of food in my hand, I can start moving her around and kind of get her to do whatever I need her to do because she's so invested in it. So if I'm going to teach her something, I can teach her because I can manipulate her body using the piece of hair, right? And I still have most of this piece left, which is the benefit to using something that's big. If you have baby puppy teeth that are super, super sharp, you're gonna, I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing, kind of cup it in the thumb of your hand. Very cute. She's like, is it pretty? You're gonna cup it it in the thumb of your hand to hold it in place, and that'll prevent them from actually getting your skin. Yes. So the first thing that we want to teach our dogs is the name game. For me, that means if I say your name, you look at me, I'm going to say that yes marker, her release is okay. The reason I don't like okay is because I say it in sentences all the time. And then I say okay, she gets up and I'm like, crap. I didn't mean that to be for you. So if I say, Ruby, yes. Okay. Right, and so that's the difference between the yes and the release. Yes is one little piece of food, and then that release is we're playing, we're having fun. I'm not gonna just hand you a piece of food after I say okay and be like, okay, eat your cookie by yourself. I'm gonna say I'm part of the cookie, right? So if your dog's not super toy motivated, you can play with a piece of food. Just like I just did, so treat chasing, you kind of, okay. And you can spin them and move them, and it makes it a little bit more exciting than just, here's a cookie, be by yourself, go to place. Yes. The other thing that you can do is play with your dog, right? So if your dog has a lot of value for just a piece of food, then then a piece of food is going to be how you're going to teach your dog to play. But ideally, I would like my dog to be able to play with me. And yeah, I can do physical play, but a lot of dogs' physical play may turn into biting and mouthing and getting too excited. So when I do that physical play, I would rather have, or instead of doing that physical play, I'd rather have something like a tug or a ball or something that I can play with my dog without pushing into that biting mouthing zone. Obviously, if you're using a ball in a room full of other dogs, you need to be careful about, I'm not gonna like chuck a ball and be like, go get it in the middle of a class full of dogs. So something that doesn't go rolling or bounce as much as like a lacrosse ball that we have will go super far. Something like this or something with a rope will be easier to kind of control the idea. But same idea. Okay, I'm never handing her the toy. She's always, whether it's the food, the toy, the whatever, she's always coming to get the reward. Because if I hand you, what's your favorite food? Okay. If I shove a piece of pizza in your mouth, is it super valuable, or are you like, what the hell is wrong with you? If I shove it at you and shove it down.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
But if I say, hey, do you want this? Come get it. Right, and I can do a lot of this with her. And if I let her win, oh, good girl. You see how she feels like she's nice and strong, right? She's working. She thinks she might win. She thinks I might win. It's competitive. Oh, good girl. And now she's coming back. She's going to tease me. And now I'm going to see if I can. You got my sweatshirt. Thank you. She's bringing it back because this competitive game, one, it makes her feel really strong. And two, it makes her feel like I might win. Oh, yeah. Oh. Hey, don't chew on that. I don't let my dogs. This is another thing that you can do with your dog, right? Just social value, especially if your dog enjoys it. You can also use social value, right? Good girl. Ruby, go to place. I don't let my dog chew on tugs or that place. Or any of their reward toys, place. Thank you. Because then you wind up needing to buy them over and over and over. So if they start chewing, I just take it away. If you're gonna chew on something, I'll give you a bone, I'll give you something else. but your reward toy is specifically for you and me to be able to interact. Does that make sense? Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Yes.
When you're playing tug and say your dog gets overly enthusiastic and maybe like nips you a little bit, what do you do?
So if it's a targeting issue where the dog missed the toy but wasn't actually trying to bite you, then I get better at presenting the toy. So you have a ball. Okay. Okay. She knows this drill. Out. This is really hard for a dog to catch. It's more likely for them to bite you by accident. This, okay, tells her exactly where to go. If she misses and grabs me, that's my fault. I presented it weird almost every time. Out. Place. If it's the dog is taking the toy before you're offering it, so I can use the toy as a lure or motivator. Heel. But she's still not allowed to take it. Nope, heel. Until I say, okay. If your dog is breaking that rule, then that's where I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make sure the dog understands the rules of the game before I start really using it to work. So my rule is out. Place. If I ask you to spit the thing out, you have to spit the thing out. And you have to do what I'm asking before you're allowed to take it. So you guys go to the ice cream truck, and he comes up and he steals $5 from you. That's not acceptable. But you saying, hey, can I have some ice cream, and then giving him $5 is a normal interaction, right? So same thing with the dog. You can't come and take the toy from me. You can't come and grab the treat out of my hand when I'm not allowing you to. But if I say that release word, that's your cue that the game turns on. When I ask you to out and do something else, then absolutely the game shuts off until I restart it. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So you want to make sure you're presenting it. If you're using a tug like this, the easiest way to present so that the dog has a surface to grab is kind of like this. And then same thing with the ball. You want to give them the target rather than letting their target kind of flop around. So if you're working with the tug, if it's in your pocket, if it's under your arm, whatever it is, I'm gonna say a different release word because I want her to stay there because she's old and tired. I'm gonna say break, and now I'm gonna give the dog that target so it's not flopping around and they're potentially gonna grab her. No, place. Does that make sense with the different signals that you're gonna use for your dog? So one of the things that you guys are gonna do, if you look at your last page, it's got a list of things that I want you to teach your dog for the week, before next week. And I would write down, yeah, there's one for everybody. I would write down for you and whoever else is in your household, what side you want your dog to work on, whether it's the left or the right. I don't personally care. Some people like the left because it's traditional. Some people want their dominant hand to be free. So if you're a right-handed person, your left hand is near the dog. Some people want it the opposite, where they want their dominant hand next to the dog because they feel like it gives them more control. Whatever is comfortable for you, I don't particularly care as long as everybody's on the same page. So for us, heel is a position at whatever side you're looking at. And I want to make sure that if I say heel, my dog knows exactly where to go, which is why I don't say heel and go, well, I don't care what side you walk on. Eventually, once the dog understands how to walk appropriately on a leash, then I might train a different side. So if my dog heels on the left, I may teach them a right side heel once they understand the left heel, just so that this way I can move them from place to place if I need to. I may teach them a center heel. I may teach them a backwards heel, but I want them to understand that loose leash heel first. We're going to teach them the name game. So the way that we teach the name game is we're going to say the dog's name, and then if they don't already know their name, give them as much motivation as they need for them to turn around and look at us with only saying their name one time. So I'm going to say the dog's name, and then I'm going to clap, snap, pop, high-pitched noises, whatever I've got to do, whistle. As soon as that dog turns and looks at me, I'm going to say the word yes and pull out that food. And then I'm going to release them and have that giant party with them. This way, their name becomes fun. I never want to say their name with something that is a negative. So I'm never going to be like, Ruby, no, because then if I call her name, she's going to go like, oh, crap, I'm in trouble. Goodbye. Instead of saying, oh, something fun is going to happen. Let me make sure that I'm coming to mom, right? So that this way, God forbid, she gets out of the house or she's in a field and she takes off running. She doesn't hear her name and go, I got to get further faster. She hears her name and goes, got to turn around. Mom's got a party. And that makes sense to everybody. So until you've taught your dog what they should be doing, I don't want you to use correction. I don't want to put any tools on the dog until they have a full understanding of all the things that they should be doing in the first place. Because it's not super fair, right? Especially everybody here has baby dogs. And if I say, baby dog that I've never taught anything to, you're wrong for not sitting, but I've never taught them how to sit in different environments. It's not fair to the baby dog. And then sit becomes super stressful, right? Because I'm not really sure what it means. So dogs are god awful at generalizing. So what that means is, just because she can sit in this room doesn't mean she can sit out in that room, and doesn't mean she can sit outside. You have to teach them in a variety of different places to get them to a point where they can understand that sit means sit no matter where you are. Eventually, you get them to a place where we've worked on it enough places, and part of your homework every week, I'll give you to work on for next week. And one of the things will be work on these things in one new location. And then that next week, I'm going to say, where'd you take your dog and what did you do? So if you take them enough places, you stop having to teach them in each place, and you can just kind of pull them out and they're like, oh, okay, I got it. It's a new place. It doesn't matter because I've made enough associations that sit means sit here and there and across the street and at Home Depot. And eventually the dog goes, sit means sit. The only thing that's consistent here is that sit. So we're going to teach the name game in all the different places. We're not using the no. You're going to introduce your dog to the marker and the release cue. So the marker, you're going to use the name game to do that. Yes, then you're going to pull out food or reach to pet or say good dog. Then as they're coming towards you, you're going to say their release cue. Run backwards, make them feel good, pet them, love them up, let them see that release cue is a big, exciting deal. Because you need to be more exciting than the environment around your dog. So I can either compete with the environment by hammering and yanking and cranking on my dog and telling them, no, 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 you're wrong. Or I can compete with the environment by saying, I'm way more fun than anything else you're going to ever encounter. And I'll tell you which one's going to work better. Because if I say I'm more fun than anything you're ever going to encounter, and at some point I may put in a correction, which could be not rewarding the dog, it could be withholding food, it could be a pop on the leash. I'm showing them how to do both things. I'm showing you, no, you have to, but also you kind of want to because you're never going to catch that squirrel, but I'm going to throw myself on the ground and wrestle with you when you come back from chasing that squirrel when I recall you, right? So you are competing with the environment, with the competing motivators that the dog might want to get to by being more fun. You have to be the squirrel, be the other dog that your dog wants to play with. You have to be more fun. We're going to define the command, so I want you to write down your expectation for each command. What I mean by that is some people, when the dog jumps, they say down. And then which I don't care what you use. Some people say down means to lie down. Well, if the dog jumps up on your kitchen counter, what should they do when you say down, right? So you just want to be aware of those things. If the dog jumps, what means get down and what means lie down? You can't use down for both things, because if my dog is standing on a kitchen table and I say down, she should lie down. They don't have the cognitive ability to contextually realize that I shouldn't be laying on the kitchen table. Yes.
So what command or correction should you give if they jump?
So if we've taught them not to jump, then we can say no. If we haven't taught them not to jump, then the first thing that we're going to do is teach them how to not jump. So my dog goes to jump on somebody. One, if I haven't shown the dog not to jump, then that's my fault. I failed. I need to say, hey, instead of jumping on this person, Rosemary, do my guess. So I'm going to say, hey, before I have an actual guest that I need to have, I'm going to say, hey, friend, come here. When my dog approaches you, just put the food down here so that you can pet them on the floor and show them exactly what they need to do, right? My other part to this is I'm still going to be more valuable than that person. Ruby, heel. So, heel. Ruby absolutely loves everybody. She really loves Rosemary. She really loves Ruby very well. She does jump sometimes on people. I'm going to say, Ruby, heel. Sit. I'm going to pay her for staying neutral. I'm not going to let her say hello to somebody while she's still amped up. Yes. Rosemary, when I release her, put your hand down and then you can pet her while she's all four on the floor. Okay? And then before she starts to fail, Ruby, let's go. Now, let's go. Yes, good girl. Right? So before she gets too excited, I'm going to pay her for coming back to me. Right? Ruby, go to place. Thank you. So, before my dog place. Yes. Before my dog gets too excited, I need to help them be successful. If I haven't shown them those things, then it's not fair for me to correct them because I've never really shown them what they should have been doing in the first place. Does that make sense? So for some people, I'll say, teacher, go say hi command. Say hi means this person's going to do this, and they're going to pet you, and then I'm going to call you away so that you're giving them a firm clue about what to do. Eventually, you may say, okay, I'm just going to, now I expect that once I've shown the dog this with a bunch of different people in a bunch of different places, now you have to do it, and at that point, I can correct you for not doing it. In terms of what you should or should not be saying, can you just shut that door? This one, the training room door. Yeah, thank you. In terms of what you should or should not be saying, I don't give any care in the world what words you use. I have a client that uses banana for his focused heel and taco for his formal recall because the other words got devalued. You can literally use any word you want, which brings me to my next point. I'm going to, obviously this dog knows how to sit and lie down, but I want somebody to give me a random word that's not broccoli or what else do we use? Strawberries. It doesn't have to be food related. I don't really care. And I'm going to teach this dog how to do that sit using that word. So somebody give me some word. I don't care what it is.
Carrot.
There we go. Carrot. All right. So Ruby, let's go. When I'm teaching my dog how to do a behavior, I'm going to say the word prior to pulling out the food and doing what I'm going to ask. So in this situation, I'm going to use carrot to teach her a right side heel because she doesn't know that yet. And I've taught her different vegetables for sitting down every time we've done this. And so she's like, yeah, I know that. So carrot, I'm going to pull the food out. I'm going to show her where I need her to be. Yes. She has no idea that carrot's a vegetable. To her, carrot means get here. Carrot. Yes. Stop up. That's rude. Carrot. Yes. Now I'm going to see if she's figured it out. Carrot. With no food in my hand. Sit. Don't you get too excited. Sit. Yes. So I'm slowly fading her into the understanding, but every time I say carrot, I'm doing it before I do any motion so that she hears that word before she clues into the cookie. Because the cookie is so exciting, it's like she covers her ears. Carrot. Now I'm fading that hand more, right? Obviously, she has an understanding of how to learn that you have to teach most dogs, right? So most dogs don't have an inherent understanding of how to learn, and that's just because we haven't taught them yet. So we have to teach her how to learn. I know. Carrot. No, that was my fault. I made it too hard. Carrot. Yes. All right, so I'm slowly building out, not having as much of a lure. Sit. Carrot. No. Oh. No. Sit. Yes. Carrot. Yes. Okay. That's good. Go to place.
Do I have a choice?
I have an answer, maybe.
Wow. How long before baby to be like that?
Well, so this is an almost 8-year-old dog.
A year?
It depends. So to get to a point where this dog I did not allow to fail until she was almost 3 years old. So she's my service dog. I know you came in a little late. I don't know if you were here when I said that. This is my service dog. I got her at 13 weeks old. When she was a baby, from the time I brought her home until the time that she was about 3, I never left her unsupervised out of her crate. And she was on a leash 100% of the time that she was out of her crate. And that leash was physically attached to me. So I never gave her the opportunity to learn to make mistakes. And so she never learned to make mistakes. Because I needed her to be perfect to be my service dog, right? I can't take a dog in public if she's stealing food everywhere. So she was crated if I couldn't watch her. She was crated if I wasn't training her, playing with her, pottying her. She was in the crate. She got no free time to go and make mistakes. Now, she had free time where she wasn't in command, but I was not doing anything other than on my phone, but really paying attention to her. So I would pull out my phone and pretend to be doing stuff, but I was paying attention to her because I needed her to understand that I might be on my phone, but I'm still paying attention to you. I'm still making sure you're doing the right thing. If you're consistent in that, by the time your dog matures at 2 years old, depending on the breed, the dog should have an understanding of what they should be doing. It'll be a lot easier going forward. If you say, well, cross my fingers that the dog is going to do the right thing, or, well, they've been really good for the last week, let me lax up on stuff, then they fall into the opportunity to make mistakes. Most dogs aren't trying to be bad. A dog learns to chew on the wall because they got bored and they started messing with the wall, but then all of a sudden messing with the wall turned into a hole, and that hole made them feel really good about themselves because they felt like they made progress at something. And now they know how to chew on a wall, right? Same thing with digging a hole. Same thing with barking at the mailman. If you give them the opportunity to do the things you don't like, then they will learn to do the things you don't like, and you will have to compete with them. If I say you're not allowed to bark at the window when I'm home, but when I'm not home, the dog can bark at the window. Guess what they're doing more of? Barking at the window. And then if you say don't bark at the window, but barking at depending on your dog, depending on how consistent you are. Now, if there's multiple people in the house, everybody has to be on the same page, right? I can't say, well, you have to walk nicely for me, but for my brother, you can be a jerk. I can't say, well, sit means sit. Oh, sometimes, but if I say sit when you're trying to jump on me, I don't really care what you do as long as you stop being a buffoon. Then the dog is going to see inconsistencies and they're not going to know what to expect from what you're expecting. Does that make sense? So if you're super consistent and you show them the things that that you like, and you build up their understanding of things gradually and make sure you're pushing them, but not throwing them into the deep end without any floaties, then typically by the time they mature, those habits will solidify. Maturity depends on breed a lot of the time. So Rottweilers, Mastiffs, Danes, they mentally mature 3-4 years old. Smaller dogs mentally mature a little bit earlier, but you're still looking at about 2 years of needing to be super, super consistent with a dog so that this way they're not forming those bad habits. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? It's also genetics, right? I just got really lucky with her that she's a little tiny rock star, but also I see in her temperament where if she had had less structure as a baby, she would have been a resource guarding nightmare.
I have 3 questions.
I might have 3 answers.
Using your squirrel example, if the dog is interested in a squirrel, let's say make yourself more interesting. Do you use food or do you use words and energy level to?
So if I have to be more exciting than the squirrel, the first step to that is doing it in a relatively sterile environment. In this room. Obviously in this room, when you're in a group class, that's probably, there's gonna be more competing motivators than you can teach it. So in your living room, in your backyard, in your kitchen, you teach that dog that I am the most exciting thing. You see a distraction, I'm gonna turn on. You don't have to use food, you can use energy. Ruby, heel. Smooth. Yeah, that's a good heel. That's a good girl. Very good. You can be exciting like this. Who's? So I have a couple different. Good job. I can also use food, yes, to reinforce what I like. Ow, that's my finger. Goose. Ready? Goose. Yes, good. Or I can use ball. And that release and showing them how to be successful before they fail, how to finish the behavior. Ruby, go to place. Before they fail is the other part to that. So I know this dog can heel for years, right? It doesn't matter how long I walk, she's gonna stay next to me. If I am teaching her, I have to break it down and show her how to do it before she fails. I can't say, I'm super exciting when there's a squirrel next to me, right? There's no chance it's gonna work because they haven't learned that I'm super exciting. So they're gonna fail. I have to say I'm in a quiet room where there's nothing else going on. I'm super exciting. And then somebody is standing outside. Hey, I'm still super exciting. You don't wanna ignore me. I'm still super, super exciting. And then the next step is there's a couple people that they really like. Maybe they're having a conversation, moving around a little bit. Hey, I'm still super, super exciting. I'm gonna keep playing with you through this. Then we go outside and we start playing and somebody's swinging around. We still have a flirt pole over here. I don't see it. Anyway, somebody's swinging something around like a cat toy or it's broken. Or a flirt pole, and somebody's doing this, and I'm playing with my dog at a distance where they can be successful. And playing can be with food, with energy, personal play, or with another toy. And then I'm coming closer and closer and closer, and the dog is still choosing to play with me. And then eventually, now we can build up to, I'm more excited than that squirrel because I'm never catching the squirrel. But that game with Dad is the most exciting thing in the world. Screw the squirrel, right? Excellent. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What's your next question?
Out and release. Are they the same thing or are they 2 different commands based on the situation?
What do you use release for? Or are you saying the release
Well,
cue?
say you're playing with a tug foot. Is it out release or either one or?
Whatever you want. So like I said, the word itself means absolutely nothing to the dog. It's whatever you condition it to be. So I can say, okay. I'm gonna play with her. Somebody give me a random word.
Pizza.
Pizza. Pizza. Yes. And teach her to out using the word pizza. Okay? It's like, where's the cookie?
The release word you use when playing with a toy, would you use that same word? Say he's grabbing a towel and you want him to
Yes.
I use leave it,
Out.
and that seems to work.
So it's not about the actual word that you're saying. It's about what you teach the dog. Yeah. No. So you can use out, you could use pizza, you could use peanut butter, you could use leave it. For me personally, out means you're allowed to have that sometimes, but I need you to let go of it and not touch it. And leave it means you're never allowed to touch it. So if you go for it, I'm going to correct you. That's my expectation. And that's why I want you to write down your own expectations. Because for some people, heel means be glued to me. And for some people, heel means be 2 steps ahead of me because I want you there. And for some people, heel means be 2 steps behind me. And for some people, heel means just walk in my general vicinity, in my bubble, right? So I don't care what your expectations are as long as you and your family know what your expectations are. It's totally, some people will never ever use a place command, or some people will never ever walk their dogs because they live on a I have one client who lives on such a crazy busy street, they can't walk their dogs. They'll get hit by a car immediately. So they when we were training, we focused really heavily on recall and not so much on the leash walking, right? You still can't drag me, but I'm not expecting you to walk down the street because you're never going to, right? Except when they're here. But it's whatever your expectation is that works for your lifestyle, right? As long as you're clear in your communication. Now, when I say a release command, that is a release from obedience. So break, okay, free, release, I don't care what it is. That means you're done with the behavior. You can play with me or you can go explore your environment. And depending on how fancy you want to get, you can make different release cues that say, okay, release, we're going to play, and release, go and explore your environment. I wouldn't recommend that at this stage because it gets really, really complicated. But I have for my Malinois 4 different release cues that all mean different things. There's different rewards associated with them because he is crazy food motivated, but he's even crazier for a tug or a ball. So if I only have food, I don't want him expecting that there's going to be a ball. So I have a specific release cue for that.
Okay, thank you.
Third question? Or is that
The
next?
treats for class,
Yes.
since we'll be using a lot, any particular treats you would?
So the
Okay.
ones that we gave out, I would recommend because they're a nice big cookie, and hypothetically, you should be able to use only a couple of treats in a training session if you're breaking them up or you're letting them kind of chew on a whole piece, right? I can go through, especially with a puppy, they kind of gnaw on it, and I can use a whole cookie for like a half an hour. So whatever treats you're going to use, I don't really care if your puppy is not super good at chewing on a treat. What I would recommend is teaching them how to do that. So part of this is going to be luring. If you look on, I think it's my second page, maybe.
I don't see the little baby plates.
Third page. So we have the different types of rewards. If we're teaching luring, let's go. What I'm going to do if the dog, especially if you have a puppy or a dog that is super polite. So a dog that's super polite might not be willing to push into the food the way that this dog is, right? She is glued to the food and she's pushing and she's trying as hard as she can to get it out of my hand. But a dog that's been taught to take treats nicely may not be willing to do that yet. So what you're going to start with is have the one big piece and a little tiny chunk broken off. And I'm going to, can you guys see what her mouth is doing? So I'm going to let her push at my hand. And then as she pushes, she's like, what are you doing? As she pushes forward, yes, and I'm going to give her that little piece. And then as she pushes forward, yes, and I'm going to break off a little piece. And then as she pushes forward, yes, and I'm going to break off a little piece. And then, okay, and I'm going to give her either a big chunk or a party or whatever I'm going to do with her, so that this way I've shown her that if you work for that food, if you push it into my hand a little bit, I will break off pieces for you. So, place. Here. So that this way you're teaching your dog how to work for that food, because a lot of them don't understand. As you start pulling the food away, they're like, what do you mean? Okay, I guess I'm not supposed to follow the food. And so you have to actually teach them, especially if you've taught them like, hey, don't chomp my whole hand. Some of them are like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to follow that. Maybe I'm supposed to just sit here. So you want to show them bit by bit and using that yes cue. Yes, I'm going to break off a piece. Yes, I'm going to break off a piece. Good question. If your dog is struggling with the harder cookie, you can always use something like string cheese or hot dogs or deli meat or something that's a little bit easier. I just don't recommend anything that's super tiny, because then as you're luring, it falls out of your hand. And then the dog grabs it off the floor. And I don't allow dogs to pick up the food that I've dropped, because I don't want them to expect to drop it. I mean, to expect to break position just because I've dropped something. So if you're luring and the food is falling out of your hands, it becomes very, very challenging to keep your dog's attention. So the only thing I don't recommend is like the little itty bitty treats. Anything that the dog can easily chew on or bite. If you're using like a hot dog, like a Pez dispenser, you can kind of just like push it through your hand. So on that note, what was I gonna say? Leash handling. That's what I was gonna say. Ruby, heel. Hi, heel. Thank you. So, sit. Hello, sit. Thank you. I love you. You have to listen just a little bit longer, okay? So, when you are leash handling, the first day that you guys come in, I want you to keep your dogs on a nice short leash. And what that means is, I want if your dog walks on the left side, Ruby heel, sit. Your handle is in the right hand. I don't want to see wrapped around. If you want to do it like this, you can. I personally prefer it when people kind of hold it over their thumb, because God forbid the dog pulls the leash out of your hand. I don't want you to break your body, right? So this is a leash lock, because the dog won't be able to pull it out of my hand, right? So my thumb and then my fist goes around the loop of the leash. You can also do it with your finger, where you hang it from your pointer finger, and then your fist goes around the loop of the leash. I find this to be the most comfortable way. I don't care what you do, as long as it's comfortable and secure. When you come through that door, I'm gonna teach you guys how to introduce that loose leash walking, and that would be my ideal situation, but obviously we have a bunch of dogs here. I don't want you coming in at the end of a 6-foot leash with your dog coming out in front of you. I want you to have your dog next to you. If that's possible using food, then that's what I want you to do. If it's not, I just want you to hold the leash nice and short and keep the dog at your side. When you're holding the leash, your control is coming from the hand next to the dog. So thumb up to the sky, grabbing the leash like so, and then closing around. So that this way, you're not accidentally pulling on the dog. I can be short and loose, right? That's my goal. My goal is not that I'm holding my dog here. She's like, what the hell is wrong with you? I don't want to hold my dog here. I want to let them make the choice to do so. But if they're not going to make that choice, then I'm going to hold them here just for safety, right? As we have dogs walking and coming and going. Yes?
This is kind of related, but how do you transport the dog in the car?
Crates.
Always.
Always. I will always crate my dog in the car, because one of the girls that works here, I don't know if any of you have met Sarah, she's got Belle and Mace. Her car got totaled like 3 times within the last year. And if she hadn't had a crate, her dog would have died. All 3 times. So the Roughlins are good. Anything is better than nothing, but I like the Roughlins, especially because they have you can get them with 2 doors. So if you can't get the dog out through the trunk, you can get them out another way. But I always will transport in a crate, every time. I also got rear-ended a couple months ago. If my dogs had been loose in the car, when I opened up my crate, my Malinois would have killed somebody. Just because he would have been agitated at the person coming up to the car. He's a protection dog. I need him to stay contained. And her, she's pretty bomb-proof, but I don't need her taking off and running away because she gets scared. So I want my dogs contained in the car.
Because when I was bringing the crate out to the car, because I was taking her to work, I had her on a leash like that, but when I was lifting up the crate, somebody was walking by, she got away from me,
Yeah.
and she ran right to the street. Thank God I'm in a residential area, and the lady knew her, she
Yeah.
met her when I was walking, but it's scary. 'cause they
Yeah,
come
so
to
that's
the
where I
stage.
wouldn't have her on leash as you're bringing the crate out. I would, if you can, have somebody handle her.
My husband wasn't home.
Yeah, or if you have to, if the dog is solid in a down state or solid enough in a down state, tie them to the car or tie them to something so that, or leave them in the house for 2 minutes. I would rather that than you're doing a bunch of things with the dog. You can't loose. Ruby's like, I'm done now. So leash nice and short so that you're not allowing them to get in front of you. If you're walking your dog on the right side, same thing, but opposite. Ruby, carrot, sit. Yes. So same thing. Loop goes in the left hand, leash is in the right. You're still keeping your dog right here. If you have a really big dog that is likely to try and get away from you or is likely to pull this leash out of your hand, then you can also leash lock the hand next to them. But my goal with this is that you're controlling how long your leash is. When you wrap the leash around your hand, you cannot do this. And so if you need a longer leash because your dog lies down, you can't do that if you're wrapped, and so you're gonna sit there choking your dog. If you need a shorter leash because you start walking through a door, let's go. Everybody, let's go. You can't shorten it because the leash is wrapped, right? So let's go. Place. So I want you to make sure that as you're coming through that door, either you're walking your dog in obedience because you've shown them how to do it, or you're working through that, keeping them nice and short, but your goal is still that at some point we're gonna walk through that door on a nice loose leash. Yes.
I use the Easy Walker.
The shoulder one?
The one connected here, but you can always disconnect it.
As long as you're holding it. I don't want you to have the Easy Walker and not be holding onto the leash. But if that Easy Walker makes you feel more confident, I'm fine with that.
And when we arrive for class, where should we wait outside?
You're gonna come into the lobby. They'll direct you where to go. Don't allow your dogs to come up to each other. Make sure that you're keeping space. Keep attention with your dog. If your dog is at the point by this time next week that you're able to kind of work with them through distraction, then I'm totally cool with you sitting there and working with them for a little bit. If they're not, just kind of hang out with them. If you feel more comfortable waiting outside, you absolutely can. So, real quick, we're gonna go through the tools that may be recommended. I don't want you to put any correction tools on your dog. I just got this really stuff. Until we recommend it. Because I wanna make sure that you're using it appropriately, and that we're showing you and making sure that the dog is where they need to be. So, we may recommend a prong collar. Benefits to a prong collar are that they even out the pressure so that this way it's not putting all the pressure directly on their neck. It's putting the pressure around their whole muscle of their neck so you're not landing directly on the trachea. All of these tools though are meant to be used on a loose leash until you issue the correction. So I don't want to see people walking on a tight leash, then I'm not going to say that the tool is the right option. Flat collar is your just normal everyday flat collar. If your dog walks nicely on this or pays attention to this, I'm fine with you using this. In fact, I would rather use this than a prong collar until we make sure that the dog understands things. There's also a martingale, which I thought I had, but I do not. The martingale has the same action as the prong collar, but it's on a flat collar, so it's kind of like this. So this way, if your dog tends to back out of things, if they can back out of their flat collar, the martingale is a good option. And then the other option is a slip lead. This starts right there. So slip leads are gonna go over the dog's head. You take the little tabby thing, and you just tighten it until it's against their neck, so that this way if she puts her head down, it can't fall over her. If your dog is an escape artist, I will always recommend a slip lead to start with, just to make sure that they can't pop out of that collar. And then eventually we may change things.
We use gentle leader.
I don't like the face thing. I don't like those because two things. One, sometimes it doesn't teach the dog what they should be doing. It just prevents them from doing it, which I always want to let the dog make the choice to make the wrong choice. The other thing is when the leash is hanging from it, they're always feeling tension. There's no way to make it so that they're not feeling pressure on that leash even when they're not doing anything. They're always feeling that tension. And the third thing is if your dog actually does lunge, they can get really bad whiplash. That's the same reason I don't like the Easy Walk harness that squeezes the shoulders, because it doesn't actually teach them what to do. It just stops them from doing it, and that one can also do some damage to the shoulders if they're pulling on it too often, because it's going to change the way that they're moving, and you see arthritic changes from that. So use whatever you need to be safe with your dog coming through these doors. And then once we teach them, I would like to get them off. So if you use an Easy Walk or the Gentle Leader or whatever, that's fine, as long as your dog doesn't find it ridiculously aversive, because a lot of them do. So if you put it on your dog and your dog is trying to paw at it and hates it, then no. Yes.
How do you get them to stop biting the leash? It's so annoying.
Well, so the first thing is you teach them how to respond to the leash, and you don't walk them on a tight leash. So a lot of dogs will walk on a tight leash, they get frustrated, they bite the leash because they don't understand what they should be doing, and that constant leash pressure is annoying.
As soon as I put it on, I just bite it.
Because there's a history there. So if I put the leash on and there's a history of there being constant leash tension, the dog says, I don't like this thing, I'm gonna turn around and bite it. So the first thing that we have to do is teach her what she should be doing and how to keep that loose leash. So when you're healing, you're teaching your dog your let's go cue or your heel cue or your whatever, you're going to use a relatively big piece of food. Ruby, heel. She heels on my left. I want you to do most of your training with a leash on. Sit. You're gonna say that heel cue, heel, let's go, walk, I don't care. Then you're gonna put the food down in front of the dog's face and start walking. As you walk, your dog's gonna chew on the food, and before they fail, you're gonna say, okay, and you're gonna free the dog, love them up, play with them, give them their cookie, whatever they're gonna do. This way, I don't wanna say, well, let me heel for 10 feet if they can't even get 2 feet, right? Then we're gonna slowly, once the dog can do that a bunch of times, heel. Okay, quit being crazy. Heel, I'm gonna put the food down, pick it up, yes, food goes back down. Yes, food goes back down. Okay. Heel. So the dog can do that a couple times. I'm picking it up for a fraction of a second, saying the word yes, then it goes back down. Heel. Oh, you took that whole piece. That was so rude. Ruby, heel. Pick it up. Yes. Food comes back down. Pick it up. Yes. Food comes back down. Okay. Heel. Once they can do that, heel. Yes. Now I'm not keeping the food there. Yes. And I'm slowly building up the duration. Okay. It's in my hand. I'm slowly building up the duration in between rewards. Then eventually the food's in my pocket. Heel. No. Heel. Heel. Yes. I go into my pocket and I pay her. Okay. And then I pay her out of my pocket. Then eventually, heel. Nope, no, heel. So now, because she failed there, I have to walk back past it, heel. Okay? Yeah, good girl. So if I have to correct my dog, I want to work them through the issue so that this way she learns that I'm not relying on that correction. But she stopped there because there was a cookie or something on the floor, so I have to walk past it again.
When you were walking, were you just letting her taste it?
I'm letting her chew on it.
Yeah.
So she can nibble on it. And then when I say yes, I break off a piece for her.
Can we use a harness?
You can, I'm gonna say the same thing. It's gonna not necessarily give you as much control as you think it will. You still have to teach them to walk on a loose leash, Ruby. Please. You still have to teach them to walk on that loose leash. And a lot of dogs, when you do try, once they understand what to do, if you do issue a correction, they don't understand it on a harness because it's not, you're just kind of absorbing all the impact on their chest. So whatever you need to do to bring the dog in under control and safely, I'm fine with. But I don't want to be relying on any tools to keep the dog there. My goal with training is always to teach the dog what they need to do and allow them to make the choice so that this way I'm not babysitting them all the time. So, homework for next week. Find your dog's highest value. Is it play? Is it petting? Is it talking to them? Is it food? Teach your dog the name game, teach your dog to lure, introduce your markers, define your commands, introduce that sit with the yes until released, and introduce your loose leash walking, whatever you're gonna call that. Keep track of where your dogs are at. So if I say, how long can your dog hold a sit stay for? I want you to know that answer. So you're using the yes to build that duration. Sit, yes, food, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, food, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Count in your head so that your dogs don't catch that as part of the pattern. Sit, release. And then maybe you sit, yes, food, count to 8. Yes, food, count to 12. Release. So you're building up the duration, right? So those are the things that I want you to work on. Just build clear communication with your dog and set them up for success. So if your dog can do it in your backyard, your kitchen, your living room, your front yard, go to a quiet parking lot. Don't say, well, my dog can do it in my living room. Let me go to the middle of a train station and cross my fingers it's going to work, because it won't.
Can we use a treat pouch, or you prefer us to put it in our pocket?
I'm okay with a treat pouch as long as you sometimes don't use it. Because if you only ever train with a treat pouch, then the dog is going to look for that treat pouch as part of the picture. And it's not like, well, I'm not listening because you don't have treats. It's the picture is different, so I don't understand, right? They only learn what we've shown them. And so if the picture is always, I get a bunch of treats and put it in my treat pouch and then we train, then that's part of the picture.